Even after 250 years of dealing with royalty, aristocracy and celebrity in all its forms, this was a conversation which took the staff at Christie's by surprise. The famous London auction house had just called a duke at his home in California regarding the sale of an important family heirloom. When would be a good time to discuss the matter further? 4:30 my time, came the reply. Was that not a rather antisocial time of day? Yes, replied His Grace. But I'm on the early shift at McDonald's, which you get paid extra for, you see. The heirloom in question was the Manchester tiara, a Cartier masterpiece featuring 1,400 diamonds. And the burger-flipping vendor was the 13th Duke of Manchester. His father, the 12th Duke, had lost the remnants of the family fortune, served a U.S. prison sentence for fraud and died in debt, in 2002, aged 63. His much-married heir would go on to sell the tiara to the V&A Museum in lieu of inheritance tax, though he has fared no better than his father. Earlier this month, it was reported that the 54-year-old Duke was in prison in Las Vegas on suspicion of burglary. But his colossal piece of Edwardian bling is just one of countless dazzling entries in a delicious new book celebrating the greatest pieces of jewelry in the world, their stories and their owners. Hidden Gems includes the intriguing tale of some of the finest sapphires and diamonds, including some which were recently unearthed in tissues and tins in a chaotic bungalow in Jersey. Then there is the story of the romantic millionaire who, to this day, doesn't wait to celebrate his wedding anniversary on an annual basis. Instead, he buys his wife jewelry on the 16th of each month. We learn of Princess Margaret's passion both for collecting and commissioning jewelry, once scooping up a grubby piece of lichen on a walk at Balmoral and sending it to a London goldsmith for reincarnation as a brooch. The book also reveals that the princess would often wear a mismatched pair of clip-on earrings. Written by two of Britain's leading jewelry experts, the book explains the intricate systems for valuing different gems and stones. In addition to the famous 4 C's for diamonds, color, cut, clarity and carat, there are the 5 S's for pearls, shine, shade, shape, surface and size, while a ruby is judged by the pigeon blood quality of its redness. But the most stunning characters in Hidden Gems are the gems themselves. As we see in these exclusive extracts, the crown jewels are certainly not the only show in town. Take the Agra diamond, perhaps the greatest pink diamond. First recorded in India in 1526, it passed through the hands of Mughal emperors, colonial adventurers, German royalty and an obscure Scottish collector whose family would bury it in a strong box at the bottom of the garden for the duration of World War II. They brought it to Christie's in 1990, where it was snapped up for a then-record £4 million by a Hong Kong buyer, who promptly announced he was going to have it recut to give it a more contemporary look. The experts were appalled, pointing out it would change its character and reduce its weight from 32 to 28 carats. The buyer was unmoved. "History is yesterday," he replied, and took his new purchase away for the chop. When staff diplomatically inquired why, he replied, "It was only ever about the rubies. Of all the art which comes onto the market, jewelry is the most personal," says Sarah Hugh Williams, the award-winning gemologist and jewelry historian who has written the book with Raymond Sancroft Baker, former European jewelry director for Christie's. The company's honorary chairman, Viscount Linley, has written the foreword. "Like my mother, Princess Margaret, I have always been fascinated by jewelry and its craftsmanship and design. The princess, it transpires, was particularly keen on the work of the modernist designer John Donald, sometimes arriving unannounced at his City of London workshop with the Queen Mother. I was a little surprised, I must say, not only at her arrival, but also because of the piece she decided to buy," he said of one such trip. "She was smitten with a chunky brooch made of a distinctly unroyal material, synthetic emeralds." The authors recall spending 6 months cataloging some of the princess's jewelry collection for sale in 2006. "There were many moments that made us smile, including the discovery of several pairs of earrings that didn't quite match," they write. They were all of the clip-on type, as it would not have been considered appropriate for a royal to have her ears pierced, but it seems the princess had a tendency to lose one of a pair. Perhaps the most celebrated jewelry sale of modern times was the 2011 round-the-world auction of Elizabeth Taylor's vast collection. The authors single out some of the highlights, including her La Peregrina pearl, whose previous owners included King Philip II of Spain and Joseph Bonaparte, and the pieces which her former husband, Richard Burton, bought at her favorite Roman jewelry shop. As Burton once remarked, the only Italian word Elizabeth knows is Bulgari. All the diamond-draped grand dames of modern times are in here: Jackie Kennedy, Christina Onassis, Grace Kelly, the actress Eva Gabor, and so on. Among a brilliant array of brooches are some of those worn by the former U.S. Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, whose jewelry was her secret code for the progress of any international negotiations. Flowers and butterflies would signal progress, crab motifs would denote slowness, and insects meant bad news. While some pieces have been blessed, others seem almost cursed. Take the stunning Sutherland necklace, created by the 18th-century Countess of Sutherland. It features her rubies and the diamonds given to her by her friend, Queen Marie Antoinette of France, shortly before the monarch's execution in 1793. This was expected to go for a huge sum when it came up for sale in 2007. But it failed to find a buyer. More than one potential client seemed genuinely concerned about the fact that the necklace had belonged to someone who had been beheaded, the authors explain, adding that the addition of blood-red rubies hadn't helped. My favorite story is that of Mrs. Martin, a reclusive pensioner who wondered if Christie's might be interested in a few pieces of jewelry in 1990. A valuer agreed to visit her modest bungalow in Jersey, whereupon she suddenly produced a stunning Belle Epoque pendant which went on to fetch £2 million. The authors were invited to pay a further visit to see if there might be any interest in a few other bits. As they recall, she rummaged around in the depths of her handbag and pulled out another crumpled bundle. "How about this one?" she said, revealing what we knew straight away to be a truly spectacular and unfathomably rare sapphire brooch. The 337-carat monster later fetched £1.3 million. On a separate occasion, she plucked a whopping 20-carat diamond out of an old tin. Another piece which garnered £1.5 million in 2001, was sold on 2 years ago for £10 million. It transpired that her mother had been much admired by a South African diamond tycoon, and these were the souvenirs of his affections. Over the years, Mrs. Martin would receive more than £7 million for her astounding jewels. The authors asked if she was sorry to see them go. "Oh no, it's quite all right," she replied. "You see, I've always got the big one." On their next visit, they delicately asked if they might look at the big one. An embarrassed Mrs. Martin explained that they could not, somehow, amongst all the tissue paper. "I think the big one was left wrapped up and tucked away somewhere, and the problem is that now I can't seem to find it. I'm almost certain, it must have been thrown out with the rubbish." By the author's calculations, the missing monster would have been 50 or even 60 carats in size. Look out for a Jersey refuse collector driving a very expensive car. As the authors point out, though, jewels are not just for the very rich and or famous. When Sally Croker-Poole, the former debutante-turned-model-turned-Princess Salima Aga Khan, sold her jewelry collection in 1995, the first lot in the £18 million sale was a relatively modest aquamarine necklace. It was bought by a first-time buyer who lived quietly on a remote Scottish island. What had prompted him to bid for a royal necklace? He had a simple reply: wives are princesses, too. But if you can't afford to buy her a necklace this Christmas, then there is always this book. Hidden Gems, by Sarah Hugh Williams and Raymond Sancroft Baker, Unicorn Press, £35, will be published on October 24.